Streaming live to the universe.
Yes!
The new paradigm in the GOE. Tonight's enlightened exposure topic is new paradigm housing, which basically means the most badass housing that we can imagine. Because in the new paradigm, everything is abundant, everything is enjoyable, everything is easy, everything is comfortable. Life is rich and full and fantastic. Fantastic. So, a standard house, one much like this, any house in the suburbs, any house in the city, these types of houses are not built for sustainability, they're not built for longevity, they're not built for efficiency. They're built for cookie cutter, mass production, corporate profit. Now there's a lot of factors that go into this. Number one, we've developed this educational system where they wanted to be able to, have degrees and licenses and regulations for everything. And so, of course, housing has a lot of that. If you're in a city or you're in a suburb, you can't just build whatever you want, and you can't even build it yourself. It has to be according to certain codes. There has to be licensed electricians and other contractors that are approved to do certain jobs, and they've got to do certain ways. Well, that's all part of the system of control. The reality is that 99% of all buildings in a city or in a suburb, again, are not built for efficiency, for sustainability, for longevity, for badassness. They're built for corporate, government, regulated control and profit. So most houses are built, with a cement foundation, which is extremely expensive. It's prone to cracking. They're built with 2x4s and plywood and drywall and fiberglass insulation and all sorts of paint or wallpaper or carpet. They've got central heating, central air conditioning, plumbing that connects to the city. None of that's sustainable. None of it's beneficial in any way. Now a lot of people think, this plumbing that we have in this, civilized world, this modern day, is so great and so convenient. Maybe, potentially, you could say it's convenient. If you like to be completely and totally disconnected with your day-to-day life, with the real truth of what you're involved in, what you're consuming, and what you're, wasting, what you're throwing out. The real truth is that it is possible to build a structure, to build a house, to build a building that lasts for thousands of years. A plywood, fiberglass, drywall, pier and beam, or cement foundation house, maybe a couple hundred years with lots of repairs. Maybe a couple hundred years with lots of repairs if you take good care of it, if you care about it, if you really try to keep it in tip-top condition. You're going to have to replace the roofs, you're going to have to paint your walls, you're going to have to replace your carpeting, you're going to have plumbing problems, you're probably going to have electrical problems, you're going to have to pay to heat it and cool it every day that it's hot or that it's cold. It's going to have rodent problems, it's going to have bug problems, pest problems, you're going to have stuff in your attic, you're going to have stuff in your walls. You've got all these problems. Well, it's possible to build a building that lasts for thousands of years. On top of that, it has no rodent problems, it has no pest problems, completely impervious to any insects or any rodents of any kind. It's possible to have a house that harvests all its own water, that creates all of its own electricity, right? Which means no utility bills. It doesn't require any heating or cooling in the summer or the winter because it's built perfectly. And so it's always the same temperature. Every single day of the year, it's the same temperature, it's the same temperature. And now you might say, oh, well, you can't do that. Well, you can do that. And the proof is that if you dig underground, once you get to a certain depth of soil, you reach, a 55-degree temperature. It doesn't matter how cold or how hot it is above ground. Once you get to that certain depth, and it's different, in Alaska versus Texas, but there's a depth of soil that you can get to where it's always the same temperature every single day of the year. So that's actually what we're doing, is we're building a house that's super insulated. It has radiant masses for heating and for cooling. It's got perfectly controlled air intake and air outtake. So it's actually very easy and very doable when you know what you're doing to build a house that requires no heating or cooling anywhere in the United States, whether you're in North Dakota or whether you're in, Baja California. So that's amazing. It's possible to have a house that you can grow food in year-round. It's possible to have a house that's fireproof, that's hurricane-proof, and that's virtually tornado and earthquake-proof as well. Unless the earth actually breaks open and the house falls inside, rumbling and shaking of the earth is not going to collapse a building like this, and it's not going to crack the foundation either, because we don't build any cement foundations in the new paradigm, unless we do, of course. But it's not going to be a very common thing. So, very briefly, I've painted a picture of a house that's most commonly lived in the suburbs or in the city, whether it's an apartment or whether it's a mansion. It's built with unsustainable materials that require a house that needs to be heated and cooled, mass amounts of utilities. You got to pay for your water, you got to pay for your electricity, you got to pay for your heating, you got to pay for your cooling, you got to paint it, you got to re-roof it, you got to change out the carpeting. You got all this maintenance, all this cost involved. You got these rodents, you got all these pests. Plus, it's something you take out this huge mortgage for. Huge mortgage for that you're potentially in debt to for the rest of your life, or you pay for it for 20 years and all of a sudden you lose a job, or you get injured, or you get hurt, or something happens, you can't make a payment, they foreclose on you and they steal it. They take it, just like that, even though you've been paying for it for 20 years. Just like that, boom, it's gone. It's like you never invested anything. It's just gone, stolen, taken. Right, so that's one side, that's one picture, and that's basically everybody in the United States. On the other hand, you've got the new paradigm housing, which is a house that lasts without, thousands of years, that doesn't require any heating or cooling, that harvests its own electricity, its own water, that grows food in it year-round, no pest problems, no rodent problems, no natural, it's not susceptible to the natural elements. You're totally protected. It's like a vault. It's soundproof. You're not going to hear all the sounds from the streets and the neighbors in the city. It's like, I didn't even mention that. Like, that's this beautiful thing. It's like this meditative sanctuary. And on top of all of that, it's 50% to a tenth, if you do it yourself in the proper way, of what it would cost to buy a house in the city or in the suburbs. Right? So you get all those benefits, but it's actually cheaper on top of that. And it's potentially more beautiful than any and all of those houses, because you can have it completely and totally customly designed to be exactly how you want it to be. It can be a hand-built, a hand-sculpted house. And it's built out of sustainable and natural materials. So it's better in every single way. And it supports the ecosystem of the earth in every single way, because we're actually using materials that are readily available locally as the mass majority of the entire structure, versus all these imported things. Like, most of our wood comes from Canada. Right? So not only are we deforesting forests, which it doesn't matter where it is, it's not good, but we're also shipping them thousands of miles, which means they're going on big trucks, which is riding on all this petroleum, which is rising up the cost of the wood, which is, destroying more and more ecosystems. It's part of this huge economy that's taking place. Nothing about it is based on sustainability. Nothing is based on sustainability. The closest that we are to having any of our commerce based on sustainability is what they do now, is they've got these sustainability credits, and big corporations will buy these green credits, and all they do is pay for them. They just pay money and then they get these green credits to like offset their carbon footprint. They're not changing their structure at all. They're not changing what they actually do, but they pay for these credits and it gives them green labeling. That's as close as we are, right? And that's a perfect example of where we are. So what I'm talking about is let's stop talking, let's stop pretending, let's stop living this pseudo facade, right? And let's start really living, and let's really question, and let's really look at this. So let's just say, and you don't have to believe me, but let's just say everything I said was true. I mean, I can't imagine anybody that would, in comprehension of what I just said, even consider the standard, the normalcy of what is available and what is partaking now in comparison, in contrast to this new paradigm housing. Right? There's nothing about it that makes any sense. And yet, 99.9% of Americans are living in that reality that's totally ridiculous, that makes no sense.